This is Talk Business and Politics with Roby Brock.
Welcome to the program. I'm Roby Brock. Thanks for joining us. One more week until Election Day, and tensions are riding high. Over the past several days, a series of bomb threats have terrorized the country through mailed pipe bombs that have targeted Presidents Obama and Clinton, former Vice President Joe Biden, two First Ladies in Michelle Obama and Hillary Clinton, and several other prominent Democrats and critics of President Trump. I sat down with Senator Tom Cotton recently to discuss this harrowing and horrific event. President Trump has called for unity and for peace and harmony. Then less than 12 hours later, he's tweeting some things about the press. He says that a very big part of the anger we see in today's society is caused by inaccurate reporting by the mainstream media, which he calls fake news. Should the president strike a little bit more of a unifying tone if he is calling for unity and then singling out the press, which I'm a member of as well, and I don't think I'm responsible for this atmosphere?
Some parts of the press, not you, do have some things to answer for. The New York Times just 2 days ago was running fan fiction about the assassination of the president. But in general, at a time like this, I think we should be focused on the things that bring us together, but also focus on the issues of political campaigns. It's fine to have sharp disagreements on issues, but we should condemn this kind of violence and we should move forward with the issues of the day.
Do you think the president deserves any of the blame for this escalating rhetoric that has caused this atmosphere?
Well,
got some people heated. I've seen some of his rallies. You've seen some of his rallies. They're not for kittens and puppies. They're a little rough.
Yeah. Well, you've also seen Maxine Waters saying that people should get in Republicans' faces wherever they are, and people going up and yelling at Ted Cruz and his wife and Mitch McConnell and his wife at restaurants, or, as I said, Steve Scalise being shot last year. It's probably best to try to keep the focus on the better angels of our nature. And even though we have sharp political differences, at the end, we're all still one country.
Let's shift and talk about Saudi Arabia. Again, I've not seen you really make a public statement on this either. We know that Jamal Khashoggi was killed. I think we've come to that conclusion. We heard it didn't happen, then it became that it was some sort of accidental death, and now we've been told by the Saudis that they do believe it was some sort of premeditated death. What do you think happened?
Well, first let me say, we have a long-standing partnership with Saudi Arabia, going back to FDR and the original king, Abdulaziz, meeting on a battleship in World War II. And the reason we have that partnership is we have common interests and common adversaries. So, although I deplore the death of Jamal Khashoggi in their consulate in Istanbul, we should not take action that's going to undermine that partnership and ultimately only empower our enemies, countries like Iran, or empower countries like Russia and China. That said, it's clear that more action needs to be taken. We're still trying to get all the facts. As you say, just in the last few minutes, there have been reports that suggest there was a premeditated murder. If that's the case, we expect Saudi Arabia's government to hold those persons responsible. Secretary of State Pompeo announced just a couple days ago some pretty tough punitive measures in terms of visa and potential sanctions against those individuals as well. So I think it's appropriate that we continue to let our two governments develop the facts. We should hold those persons responsible to account. We should not, however, take actions that would undermine our long-standing partnership that helps advance the prosperity and the security of the people of our country, and also helps promote our interests in the Middle East.
If this does prove to be way up of the chain of command of Saudi Arabian leadership there, what do you think should happen?
Again, I don't want to speculate about where it's going to go because the facts have changed a lot and we're still gathering those facts. But the people who were on the ground in Istanbul and responsible for this death have already faced punitive measures that Secretary Pompeo released earlier this week. They may face more if it's as serious as this latest report suggests. But we should not impair our relationship with Saudi Arabia, which has an increasingly close relationship with Israel when it comes to cooperating on terrorism and other questions of security against Iran.
So I want to stay away from speculation as you've asked, but I guess I'm just having trouble understanding. We have this long-standing relationship. We don't want to deter some of the alliance that is there, but clearly if a U.S. resident, if this thing happened as barbarically as it is described, you can't just slap someone on the wrist for something like that.
No, and
what could be the magnitude of punishment there?
I don't think what Secretary Pompeo has already done or what he's proposing to do along with Secretary Mnuchin at the Treasury Department would be a slap on the wrist. And I know that in his travels there, he spoke about the need to be transparent and forthcoming and do so as quickly as possible. I think that's why the Saudi government has been more transparent and forthcoming over the last week since Secretary Pompeo traveled there. In the end, though, this relationship is about more than just a single king or crown prince in Saudi Arabia and more about a single president in America. That's why it goes back for 70 plus years. It's about keeping the American people safe, and it's about defending our interests in the Middle East.
Let's talk about Russia. You've been supportive of the president's move to exit the INF treaty that was set up during the Reagan years. I'll read your quote to you. You have tweeted about this. The INF treaty was rightly viewed as a remarkable achievement by President Reagan when it was ratified over 30 years ago, but today the Russians are openly cheating and the Chinese are stockpiling missiles because they're not bound by it at all. What do you want to see put in place, if anything, to replace the INF?
So let's back up a little bit, Roby. The INF, the Intermediate-Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, banned all land-based missiles ranging from about 300 to about 3,500 miles. The Soviet Union wanted that very badly because we were putting intermediate-range missiles on Europe, threatening them. We don't face the same kind of threat unless you think Canada or Mexico is going to start fielding those missiles against us because of our geography. That said, it's now become obsolete because Russia is blatantly violating it. Even the Obama administration has said that. They are fielding intermediate range missiles that can hold our troops at risk throughout Europe and the Middle East and East Asia. Meanwhile, there's no other country in the world that's bound by it. So China and other countries are developing these missiles too. It puts us at a significant disadvantage in East Asia. The Obama administration tried for many years, and now the Trump administration tried for a year to bring Russia back into compliance. They've made plain they're not going to. At the same time, China continues to churn out more and more of these missiles. So I've been advocating for years that we should withdraw from the INF treaty. I'm glad to hear that the president is about to do so.
Should we structure some other agreement, some other treaty?
Well, I think what should come after the INF treaty is a lot of intermediate range missiles that will deploy to our allies' territories in Europe and in East Asia that will deter the threat that we face from Russia and China. Now, if the deployment of those missiles causes Russia and China to sit down to the table with us, causes Russia to go back and destroy their missiles, then that's one thing. That's exactly what happened in the 1980s. After Russia deployed, or after the Soviet Union deployed its missiles, we deployed ours in 1983. That forced the negotiations. But in the meantime, we can't be the only country in the world that refuses to develop these very important weapons to protect ourselves and protect our allies.